Hello, everyone. I'm student meteorologist Filippo for Micah, and we have plenty to talk about this week, including some tropical activity. And that's where I want to start off with on This Week in Weather, the show where we talk about what you need to look out for the upcoming week. So right now I want to talk about Invest 95L here in the Western Atlantic has a 40% chance of development, and more likely than not going to be Invest 96L here. This is the third disturbance in the Atlantic right now with a 50% probability of development. So right now, Invest 95L does have that 40% chance of becoming a tropical depression. And right now, our models are split on whether or not this does gain tropical storm intensity to become our fourth named storm of the year. The storm is expected for the most part to stay out to sea, could see some impact on Newfoundland and Labrador as this storm starts to curl off to the east and towards the Iberian Peninsula and France. But I do want to talk about the next system, which is more likely than not going to be Invest 96L, because this has a much higher chance of forming in the Atlantic. And I do think that once it gets through the main development region, weirdly enough, we talk about the main development region a lot in being the place where storms rapidly can intensify. Right now, with this year, El Nino year, it looks like storms need to get out of that main development region first to have any sort of chance of forming. And there is a wide spread on where this storm goes. Most of them have it remaining a fish storm. Some models do have this storm heading towards Bermuda, but could gain intensity up to a hurricane, maybe even a Category 2 hurricane. That is something that we're watching here on our spaghetti plots. Again, this is very far out. This storm is just about to emerge off the coast of Africa and move into the Atlantic, where I do think it could gain tropical storm intensity in the main development region before, once it gets north of the Antilles, that is when it could develop into potentially our first hurricane of the year. And at this point, we are below normal for hurricanes. Our average first hurricane of the year is August 11th, and we're about a week and a half away from the beginning of September. So a very slow hurricane season, but we do have some activity to talk about. And I do want to pull up our European model showing Invest 95L probably staying just as an Invest and really not forming because of the high pressure here, kind of taking its time to steer that storm into a pre-existing mid-latitude cyclone, and kind of the cold front there kind of consuming the storm. And it is pretty far north for this time of the year for any sort of development. We did have some development pretty far north, but I don't think that this is going to form at this point. I think that those probabilities, that 40% probability, will start to go down relatively soon. But here is the next wave emerging off of Africa that will emerge off the coast Monday into Tuesday. And by Thursday and Friday, I think we could see at least some sort of tropical development there. This actually looks quite promising on the European model. But then you can see that the wind shear takes over, and this storm does not have that defined low pressure center until it gets closer to the United States and Bermuda. In that case, it does start to intensify, and the current European model does have this getting down to a 961 low pressure. Now, I think that is a little bit too low on the low pressure there. That would be probably close to a major hurricane, probably a high intensity Category 2 storm. I think that right now it's too early to call whether or not that does happen. But I do think that this next storm emerging off the coast of Africa in the next couple days could have some impacts. And if it doesn't, then we still have to be concerned about maybe some increased rip current risk, especially in New England, as we go into the beginning of September. But let's take a look closer to home now. This is our overall pattern, and in general, we have been watching this ridge in the south central portion of the country. I mean, Amarillo currently reporting 105 degrees. It's very hot, but that ridge is really controlling basically our entire weather pattern. We have a low pressure system off here into portions of Ontario that's keeping the Northeast and Great Lakes a little bit cooler right now in the 60s and 70s. Compare that to the West Coast, where it's still quite warm in the 80s and 90s, but we are seeing a low pressure system now moving into British Columbia and Alberta. And in terms of severe weather, there's not a lot to talk about right now because of that ridge and where it's positioned. We could see some hail in the Dakotas over the next few days. That is probably the main risk of any sort of severe weather. But as we go into the day 3 through 8 period, this is Tuesday through Sunday the 30th, very low probabilities. Everything here in brown is a 5% risk of severe weather in general, all severe weather categories. And we don't have any 15% risk besides this one on Wednesday across areas of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Louisiana. So that's the time frame that I'm watching. Let's take a look at the European model and just discuss what our overall pattern is going to look like over this next week. So we're still going to maintain that south central U.S. ridge. It is not going anywhere. We do have this current storm system moving through the northeast, and that's associated with a long wave trough that is moving through the area. But once that moves off the coast, we're really kind of talking about these smaller scale systems associated with a few short wave troughs. This first one here is going to be moving into Minnesota and Wisconsin. This is during the day, Tuesday into Wednesday. And again, that kind of stays very much on the northern fringes of the United States, but we could see some increased moisture across the entirety of the East Coast. This is Thursday as that low pressure system swings through. So the next chance for some precipitation on the East Coast looking to be Thursday, but in general, the western U.S. is expecting to stay hot. Could see a few ridge riders moving in over the weekend as well. Definitely not out of the picture, and you can kind of see that area with some higher QPF or quantitative precipitation here. This is Friday night into Saturday morning is when the next ridge rider setup could be. I do want to talk about the heat, though. The heat is going to persist. Right now, we're, again, talking about triple digits across much of the southern U.S. That is going to stay in place. You can see here, this is Monday. We're watching for some very, very oppressive heat. I mean, everywhere in this, like, purple shading here is very close to 110 degrees, if not over 110 degrees. And you can see that the areas in the 90s, which is basically like this brown shading, extends across the entirety of the south, the U.S.-Mexico border, and that continues over the next few days as well. I mean, look at these numbers. This is Yuma and Phoenix are both in the triple-digit teens. Just oppressive heat for later in the summer, 117 degrees there. So it is going to be quite hot. But the eastern U.S. is much better off. Still looking at 70s and 80s throughout much of the week. And eventually, as we get into potentially the last day of August and into early September, there could be a bit of a signal here for some more oppressive heat, I guess, for this time of the year as we go into early September here. And the GFS, our American forecasting model, has a very similar output here for Sunday into Monday, so the 30th into the 31st. That is something that I want to watch, especially for the eastern U.S., kind of this temperature roller coaster. Excuse me. So the long-term trend here across the next few days here is that trough moving out of the eastern U.S., the ridge staying in place across the south central U.S., a few short waves of some disturbances kind of riding right along the U.S.-Canada border. But in general, it is going to be hot and humid in the central United States, and it is going to stay a little bit cooler on the coastlines in general. So again, still summer, still going to be hot. The humidity is going to be a little bit better. Actually, we could pop up our dew points here on the Euro. Still going to be humid, especially across the southeast. And we can kind of take a look here. Everywhere in yellow or red on this output here is just oppressive humidity. Very summer-like still, and it's going to be quite tropical, especially in these areas in this orange color here with dew points remaining in the 70s, even the mid-70s, just absolutely oppressive and downright uncomfortable. There's no other way to frame it. So hot and humid, especially in the south, a little bit cooler, but still humid in the northeast. The west, it's going to be dry and hot, which is very typical for this time of the year, with some precipitation chances most likely going to be staying for the most part across the northern tier of the country, with some afternoon showers, downpours, and thunderstorms across the southeast. So I wanted to make sure I hopped on here and gave this quick little explainer for your forecast. Drop your city in the comments section down below. Followers given free town-specific weather requests from me. I can go through whatever you would like, whether whether it be tropical weather, whether it be just how oppressive the heat and humidity is in the south central United States, as well as any severe weather chances. But I hope you guys enjoyed this breakdown of the weather upcoming this week, and I'll be back with some short form content Monday through Saturday, and we'll be back with another This Week in Weather next Sunday. Have a good day, y'all, and I'll see you guys again very soon. Peace.